Hello, and welcome back to Spittin' Sports with Lamar. I am Casey Lamar, and I'm coming at you from the 256. Today is Monday, so that means college football recap, so let's go ahead and get right to that. So, like I said, as always, I just do the top 25 teams because that's really where everything goes down. But anyway, let's just go ahead and get started with that. On Friday night, you had the number 23 South Florida Bulls taking on the Tulsa Golden Hurricanes. I believe that's still what they go by. Tulsa almost shocked them. It took a field goal, took a late comeback and a field goal right at the end of the game for South Florida to win and stay undefeated. But that's what they did. They got that field goal, won the game. 25-24 was the final. South Florida stays undefeated. Saturday, it just goes in order of where they're ranked. So the first game from Saturday here, Alabama took down the Missouri Tigers at home on Saturday. The big news from this was Tua getting hurt. That's the big news. If Alabama loses Tua, then they're very susceptible to losing to anybody. Not anybody, but you know what I'm saying. They're very susceptible to losing, especially to LSU, possibly Auburn, even though Auburn's a whole other story right now, and the SEC championship, should they make it. But Tua, he was 12 of 22 for 265 and 3 touchdowns. But like I said, he went down on that injured right knee that he hurt against Arkansas. I always kind of thought that injury may be a little more than just a sprain, and then it was aggravated on a run play where he slid down. It's questionable, but how Alabama is, they keep everything under wraps. We won't know anything unless it's seriously major. They should probably sit him against Tennessee this weekend because they're going to need him for LSU in 3 weeks. But Alabama gets it done. Another high yardage game for Alabama. They didn't score 50 points. They only scored 39. A lot of yards again. The defense played really well after a slow start early. The defense played amazing for them. Held Missouri to right around 200 yards, maybe even under. But Alabama wins again easily, as you would expect, 39-10 over the Missouri Tigers. The next game, a game I actually picked right. I picked LSU on Friday to win this game, but the way they won it, oh my goodness. Georgia, their offense looked out of sorts from the start. They just couldn't do anything. Burrow wasn't amazing, but he played mistake-free football. He only completed 50% of his passes for 200 yards, but he scored 2 rushing touchdowns. And LSU's defense at home, nasty. Just nasty is the only way to describe that. Georgia's offense looked out of sorts the entire time. They couldn't get anything going. Fromm threw 2 picks. They fumbled the ball twice. And LSU, they were up 16-0 at halftime. They ended up winning the game 36-16. LSU playing like that, they could beat anybody. But their home field, I think that played obviously a huge role in that game. But LSU, they just beat the dog out of the Bulldogs, man. They were all over Georgia from the start of that game. Like I said, 16-0 at half, final score 36-16. LSU right back in the top 5. Georgia, they fell to 8th. By no means is Georgia out of it. We saw them get stomped out by Auburn last year, and they still made it to the playoff. Well, won the SEC, made it to the playoff. Played in the national title game last year. So Georgia by no means out of it, but LSU showed that they're legit. They look bad against Florida. Obviously, they lost to Florida, but they come back a week later and make a huge statement and move right back into the top 5. The next one, Ohio State, much closer for a long time than people thought. At halftime, it was only a 3-point game, Ohio State, with that lead. But they put away the Golden Gophers. They put away Minnesota. Haskins, again, outrageous, 412 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's just ridiculous. But Ohio State, they get the job done 30-14 over Minnesota. The next one, Notre Dame. It seems like anytime they play Pittsburgh, it's a close game. Pittsburgh I wouldn't say they blew this one late, but they allowed Notre Dame to take the lead, and Notre Dame held on to it and won. But it looked like one of those games where Notre Dame was going to pull a Notre Dame and possibly lose to somebody they shouldn't. But they didn't. They won. Stayed undefeated, 19-14 over the Pittsburgh Panthers. Minus the USC game at Notre Dame, it looks like that they're in. They're into the playoff unless they give one away or lose one like they almost did on Saturday, but they didn't. They won 19-14 over Pittsburgh. Another one of the upsets. It was an upset-filled weekend, obviously. But Iowa State, I went with West Virginia in this game for obvious reasons, but Iowa State, they are beating ranked teams now. They beat Oklahoma State last week, and they beat West Virginia this week. They were up 20-14 at halftime. West Virginia didn't score the rest of the game after halftime. Iowa State put 10 on the board, 10 more points on the board in the fourth, and won that game 30-14. They just had, home game. Iowa State, they just frustrated West Virginia and pulled out that upset. They improved to 3-3 this year. West Virginia falls to 5-1. The Big 12, it looks like Texas is in that driver's seat, having beat Oklahoma already. But it's crazy. We'll just have to wait and see. But now there is not an undefeated team left in the Big 12, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that was the last of the undefeateds there. So West Virginia is now 5-1. Iowa State improved to 3-3. They won 30-14. The next game was a very good game as well. In the middle of the day, Oregon, Washington. They mirrored each other through the first three quarters. Nobody scored in the fourth. They went to overtime, and the Ducks got it done, 30-27. The Ducks look like they might be a legit team this season. Obviously, their quarterback's very good, and Justin Herbert. Washington, they are now officially out of the playoff conversation, and with that Auburn loss is looking worse and worse every single week because Auburn looks worse and worse every single week. But Oregon, one loss, Pac-12. The Pac-12's got a long way to go to make the playoffs, but Oregon, one loss, they've got a good shot as any in the Pac-12 to make a run at the playoff. But Oregon got the job done over Washington, 30-27 on Saturday. Penn State, your playoff hopes, they're gone as well. Just 2 weeks after losing to Ohio State on their home field, they turn around and lose to Michigan State on their home field. Penn State was up 14-7 at halftime, and then they only scored 3 points in the second half. Michigan State scored 7 points in each of the final three quarters. Michigan State scored with just over a minute left to take the lead, and Penn State could not answer to pick up the win. Michigan State, they went to Happy Valley, got the job done, 21-17. Michigan State's so up and down, it's weird, but they beat number 8 Penn State. Just another one of those mini upsets from the weekend. Michigan State 21, Penn State 17. That was the final score there. Texas, close one against Baylor. Texas had all their points that they needed for the game by halftime. They scored 23 in the first half. Baylor scored 10 in the first half, and then Baylor put a touchdown on in the third. Baylor did have a chance right at the end of the game to score a touchdown, but a couple bad passes out of the end zone ended up crushing those hopes for the Baylor Bears, and Texas won. Texas is 6-1 now, 4-0 in the Big 12. Texas, they're in the driver's seat now for the Big 12. It's their conference to lose at this point, but obviously crazy things happen. Texas, with everything that has happened, Texas playoff discussion, they're in it big time. They win the Big 12. It looks like they could be in part of that Final Four, looking for a national title. But Texas got the job done against Baylor, 23-17. The next one, UCF. UCF had all they could handle, but they still came back and pulled out the win. They were down 30-17 at halftime, and they shut out Memphis in the second half, fought all the way back, and won the game 31-30. UCF, they didn't move in the polls at all. They stayed at 10. Obviously, nobody too impressed with how close they beat Memphis by. A chance for the little guy to make the playoff, it looks like it's non-existent. Oklahoma jumped them, and Oklahoma didn't even play this week. But UCF stays undefeated, 31-30 over Memphis. The next one, I pick Wisconsin. I'm totally dead wrong. Michigan, they're forced to be reckoned with. They absolutely destroyed Wisconsin. It was 13-7 at the half. The second half, they just ran away with the game. The final score was 38-13. Shea Patterson only threw for 124 yards, but it didn't matter. They just shut Wisconsin down. They just beat the snot out of them. They outscored them 25-6 in the second half. And like I said, the final score is 38-13. Michigan, they're legit. That loss to Notre Dame, like I've said every week the last several weeks, not a bad loss at all because it looks like Notre Dame's going to the playoff. So Michigan, they find a way. They beat Michigan State. They find a way to beat Ohio State. You could be looking at the Big Ten champs there. But Michigan looking real good right now. They really beat up on Wisconsin. 38-13 was the final there. Next one, Florida. This one got chippy at times. Vanderbilt jumped out quick, jumped out early. They were all over the Gators early, but the Gators fought back, grinded it out, got the job done. They scored 17 in the fourth quarter. They end up winning 37-27. Florida, they're well in the discussion now. The SEC East, Kentucky, Georgia, Florida, it could be any of those guys winning the conference, or winning the SEC East, not the conference, winning the SEC East this year. But Florida, they just kept their winning ways going. 37-27 was the final, and like I've said before, their loss to Kentucky, not a bad loss, obviously, this year. The next one, Miami, another upset. Virginia, I took Miami in that game. I thought it was going to be close, but they found a way to. Miami lost the game. Their quarterback issues reared its head again. Perry was replaced by Rozier. Rozier didn't fare much better. Virginia, they were up 13-6 at the half. All they needed was a field goal to secure that win. Virginia, they take down the Miami Hurricanes 16-13 on their home field on Saturday. The next one, another game I picked wrong. I picked the Buffs, Colorado, to get their first win ever against USC. Well, that didn't happen. They're 0-13 now, all-time against USC. USC, they jumped out 21-7 at halftime, and they never looked back there. Final score was 31-20, but USC was just all over them the whole game. After that first touchdown by Chenault for Colorado, USC never looked back. They really just grabbed onto it and went to the end, won the game fairly easily. 31-20 was the final there for the Trojans over the Buffaloes, Colorado, the Buffs, whatever you want to call them. Next one, Auburn's. That dumpster fire got a little hotter. I would call it almost dumpster fire at this point. They've lost 3 games now. Their offense hasn't shown up in any of them. Tennessee, Jared Garantano, he had the game of his life for Tennessee, his best game yet. But Tennessee looked good. They were up, what was it, 27-17. They really jumped out in that third quarter and never had to look back. Auburn put a touchdown on, but Tennessee had that game. After halftime, when Tennessee scored those 14 points, they had control of that game. Auburn's offense is bad. People are wanting to get rid of Malzahn in his first year of his extension, but Auburn's got to fork out $32 million, $36 million if they want to fire him now, which they could take care of that. They could figure out how to take care of that, but Auburn just keeps falling. They're down to 4-3 now. Tennessee's 3-3. Tennessee looking much better. They got Alabama this weekend, so we'll see how well they play on Saturday. It is a home game in Knoxville, Tennessee. But Tennessee, they get their first SEC win. They had lost 11 in a row going into Saturday, but they take down the Auburn Tigers, and they improved to 3-3, 1-2 in the SEC. But they take down Auburn 30-24 on Saturday. Next one, Texas A&M, South Carolina, hard-fought game. It was 13-0 A&M at the half, but South Carolina wasn't going to go down easily. South Carolina, going into the fourth, it was tied at 16 because South Carolina scored 16 in the third quarter. But A&M, they scored 10 in the fourth compared to South Carolina's 7, and they squeak out another win. Texas A&M 5-2. Their 2 losses to 2 teams in the top 3. Clemson by narrowly, and then they got beat by Alabama pretty bad. But that's just what's happening to everybody that plays the Tide this season so far. But Texas A&M, they improved to 5-2. South Carolina 3-3. There was some hype surrounding South Carolina this year, but that's all gone now. Texas A&M 5-2 now, 26-23 over the Gamecocks on Saturday. We'll take a quick look at the top 10 after the shakeup. It happened last week. You got Bama 1, Ohio State 2, Clemson 3, as expected. Notre Dame's 4 now. LSU jumped back to 5. Michigan 6. Michigan jumped Texas. They jumped all the way to 6. Texas 7. Then you got Georgia, who just lost at 8. They're not out of it by any means. Oklahoma, they're back up to 9. UCF didn't change. Florida's 11. Oregon 12. West Virginia, they fell 7 spots. Kentucky, they didn't play, but they gained 4 spots because of all the craziness. Washington fell to 15. North Carolina State 16. A&M, it's jumped to 17. Penn State fell all the way to 18. They fell 10 spots. Iowa goes from unranked to number 19. They played a good game on Saturday. Cincinnati jumped 5 spots to 20. They're still undefeated. South Florida still undefeated. They jumped to 22. Mississippi State jumped 2 more spots to 22. Wisconsin fell 8 to 23. Michigan State back in the rankings again after being unranked last week to 24. Washington State joins the rankings for the first time this season at 25. But that is it for the recap. Just wanted to give you the top 25 there. Obviously go over the games. Bunch of craziness with people losing, all that stuff. Bunch of upsets. But if you enjoyed the video, give a big thumbs up, leave a like, share the video, share the content, and subscribe to the channel so you can see more videos like this, as well as the other ones that I produce. But this has been Spittin' Sports with Lamar. I am Casey Lamar. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.